he paid for his tax decreases. You know, sometimes people will say, well, it's easy to criticize from the sidelines. You weren't there. You didn't have to balance that budget 4 years ago, 3 years ago. What would you have done differently that first time around? Would you have made fewer cuts, kept taxes the same, increased taxes, or delayed tax cuts?
Well, Darrell, you said that he funded the decreases by cuts, but he also funded the decreases by increases. And that I would not have done, and that's what I said. So, you know, sometimes that gets glossed over, and the governor certainly tries to gloss over it. But here's what
I'm sorry.
I'm talking about in the second budget, certainly.
In the sales tax,
in the sales tax increase.
Right,
look, if you're on a fixed income, you did not get a tax cut. Period. And if you're making, let's say, 30 grand a year, you got a net tax increase. You know, I know the governor likes to gloss over it, but that's fact. So if you were at the top, if you're at the top end of the income scale, you could get as much as a $6,000, a little bit more than the $6,000 net tax cut because you made enough income to make up for the sales tax increase. But if you didn't make enough income in the first place and you were really struggling to make it, that means you got a net tax increase. Now, here's the other thing that they've really tried to gloss over. But trust me, local communities are well aware of it. As you probably know, I spoke to the Ohio Township Trustee Association the other day, and when Senator Faber was talking about how their budgets are doing better than ever and they have record surpluses, I've never seen an audience with as many people shaking their head no in my life. I mean, the fact is, from just a fiscally responsible, fiscally conservative vantage point, the state budget, you talked about the cuts that have been made, it's bigger than it's ever been. The state budget is bigger than it's ever been. Talk to local elected officials and see how many of them have budgets that are bigger than they've ever been before. You'd be hard-pressed to find a lot that are in that category. So state government has grown. They take more local money than they used to, which I don't believe was theirs to take because there was a long-standing agreement about how that money was supposed to be divided. And I don't consider that to be fiscally responsible or fiscally conservative to take more money out of local communities, grow your budget, and then use some of those cuts on top of it to fund tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the state. Now, what I would say to you is, what I think is my responsibility is to say, what are my budgetary priorities in general? And you can look at my record. When I became mayor of my city of Lakewood, we had terrible financial problems. There were a lot of calls to raise taxes to try to make up the difference, and we didn't. We dramatically cut the size of city government. Now, we did not give a bunch of handouts to the richest people in my city and raise taxes on the poorest people in my city. We actually put some of the savings into services that helped everybody, including economic development, housing enforcement, law enforcement. Same thing at the county. There were calls to raise taxes as soon as I got in. We dramatically cut the payroll. We actually returned more money to local communities. And we put money into services like job creation, law enforcement, early childhood education. Those would be my priorities. They have been my priorities, and they would be if I was governor.
But spending does go up in your budget, in your Cuyahoga County budget now, I believe.
It's gone up from the second budget compared to the first budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But let me just point out this is that the payroll did not. So we made investments into things, let's say, like, for instance, infrastructure. We did a lot more infrastructure spending. We didn't pass the bill down to local communities to do that. We did about $60 million worth of infrastructure spending. And we have about 53% of our general operating budget in reserve. That's an almost unheard of number. Anybody that knows government finance knows it. You should have 10%. 20% is good, 25% is really good. Now, we signed an ordinance saying that we have to keep at least 25% in reserve, and we've exceeded that by twice the amount. So I think it's been very fiscally responsible.
Not to belabor, but you know, if you criticize Casey for that, I mean, what would you have done differently, you know, to that budget? Would you have? You obviously would not have increased.
I would not.
Could you have balanced the budget without a tax increase? Do you think?
Yeah, because I've done it repeatedly, and to me as a candidate for governor, my job is to explain to people what are my priorities. It's the same thing that Governor Kasich talked about, not very accurately, by the way, in 2010. He said he was going to balance the budget. He said he was going to cut taxes at the same time. very light on the details. If he had told people that he was going to balance the budget by just passing all the pain down to school districts and communities, I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now, because I don't think he would have won. If he had told people he was going to cut taxes by raising everybody's sales taxes, I think we might be having a different conversation right now. I've managed to balance budgets without doing those things, by making government more efficient. I think state government can be still more efficient than it is right now. And my priority would not be with some of the tax cuts that I think are overly weighted towards the wealthiest people in the state. I think that is just a failed economic theory that Governor Kasich believes in. There's a lot of other people across the country that believe in it. I don't think it works. And the proof is in the pudding, because it isn't working in this state. Where is the evidence that the tax cuts that overwhelmingly benefited the wealthiest people in the state have been working in terms of job creation? If we're 45th in the country in job creation. There's been virtually no job creation except for the first year of the Kasich administration, when Governor Strickland's policies were still largely in effect. The more time there has been to have his policies, whether it's budgetary policies, education policies, or tax policies in effect, the worse the economy has done. Yes?
John, you were